Hello and welcome to this afternoon meeting by the Jerusalem Press Club. We're doing those briefings every day now since the war between Israel and Iran started Thursday last week, and today is day 5 of the war. Our guest today is Dr. Eyal Hulata, former National Security Council Director during the Bennett Lapid government. Hello, Dr. Hulata. Thank you for joining us from the US.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
So I would like to ask you to analyze maybe the handling, so to speak, the management of the war until now. What started on Thursday in a surprise attack against Iran seems to be degrading the Iranian military day by day. Nevertheless, on the Israeli side, Iran has and continues to send missile salvos. Admittedly, they've been dropping in numbers night by night. But when they succeed in overwhelming Israel's interception systems, regardless of whether they just, I don't know, go through them or reach a fatigue point, when they hit, it's devastating. So Israelis are very much in the home front feeling this war. First of all, can you say in a geopolitical analysis is how Israel is doing? Is Israel winning this war so far? And how it might look at the end of the war? Thank you.
Right. So first, I think it's important to start with what's happening in the home front. I'm in Washington, D.C. at the moment, but my family is back in Israel. Everyone is feeling that, Jonathan, as you said, our air defense system are 90%, about 90% effective. But when Iran fires 100 missiles, that would mean that 10 will penetrate, and some of them will hit residential buildings like in Bat Yam or Petah Tikva or Rehovot or a strategic facility in Haifa. That's the nature of statistics and numbers. Iran is firing serious missiles, very heavy, very long range, with huge warheads. They are firing them at civilian populations, which is something that I think is important to note. But this is the nature of our asymmetric warfare with their adversaries. When it's Hamas and it's a terror organization, then people say, well, it's a terror organization, so what do you expect? But this is a serious country like Iran. Israel on June 12th was very, very precise and surgical. I will address this in a minute, but when they respond on our heavily populated areas of Tel Aviv, it's that's their choice to go after civilians and in this way. But that's just the nature of this conflict. In any case, I think, and again, I've started with the damage and with the casualties, several dozen casualties. The damage to Israel in this conflict is way below what we all would have expected, and I think also what would have happened if the proxy network around Israel was still intact. Hezbollah in the north and Hamas. Iran is practically dealing with Israel alone, not getting the strategic support, not from Russia, not from China, and definitely not from the network of proxies, this ring of fire that they've built around Israel for many, many years. So that's element of it. But now let's get to the core. Israel has attacked the Iranian nuclear program. The reasons for that, naturally, there are various reasons of why to act at the moment. But provided the reporting that the Supreme Leader has initiated approval to start making steps, maybe creeping steps, but start making steps towards the weaponization program, which is the element that is most dangerous in the Iranian nuclear program. That's like a tripwire. And when that happens, the engagement between the US and Israel, of course, looks very, very differently. Marry that with the installment or maybe the collapse of the negotiations and the IAEA Board of Governors resolution of non-compliance of Iran on that Thursday, June 12th in the morning. And this set of conditions were sufficient. I have to say this, I was National Security Advisor for a government that is the complete political opposite of this one. And you hear me say this. I think you've also heard former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett and former Prime Minister Yair Lapid, and former Minister of Defense Gantz, and former Minister of Finance Lieberman, that all served in our government. There are many issues that are polarizing in Israel. Iran is less polarizing, maybe almost not polarizing at all at the center of helm of national security thinking. And if those conditions were met, and given Israel's readiness, then this was the point to act. The damage to the Iranian nuclear program, my understanding is that it is significant. We can talk about this a little bit. Of course, there are things that we were able to do, things that we were not able to do. But I think by and large, I don't want to talk in terms of winning. I don't think that there are winners in any of this, and definitely don't like the usage of winning in the other fronts conflict. But there are significant, I think, reasons to understand Israel is having the upper hand here. Iran has been a hit in its strategic areas. Israel's objectives are being met. And the Iranian response is not even close to what I'm sure they have imagined that they could do. Of course, what will matter is what will be the day after and how this will play out in the future. We can talk about this later.
Okay, so segueing from that, I would like to ask you two questions, one on Iran and one on the US. Feel free to, avoid it if you don't want to speculate on those issues. First of all, Iran, as the days go by, we hear the rhetoric of, a massive surprise and tonight's the biggest salvo attack. Are they actually like to maybe have some kind of rabbit down their hat that Israel is completely unaware of, and they might get together and pull some brilliant military maneuver like that, or is it unlikely considering the IDF's, I would say, exponential achievement in Tehran, at least according to what we've been told by the IDF spokesperson? That's one question. The second one is on the U.S. administration. If you would like to address this first one, let's go with this one first.
Yeah. So, first of all, we don't know what we don't know. So whether or not Iran has more opportunities, I would imagine that Iran has invested time in developing various tools to damage Israel. We've seen a lot of Iranian espionage done in Israel, and a lot of CI in numbers that far exceed the things I remember from my time in the intelligence community or in the National Security Council. So I wouldn't rule out that Iran has prepared some surprises, maybe even within Israel. Terror has always been a weapon that they've been using every time that they were in stress, and this can hit Israel in any time, or Israelis in any time, in any place. So I would be careful in assuming that Iran cannot harm Israel. But I will say that Iran's ability to strategically do damage to Israel, my hope is that Israel is prepared carefully. I think that by way of using missiles, drones, cruise missiles, we practically see what Iran has. It's been mostly similar to also what we've seen in April and October of last year in the two first rounds of attacks against Israel, and our air defense is pretty much prepared and capable to deal with that in significant numbers. So this is as it comes to Iran. Again, there can always be surprises. And you wanted to ask about the US?
So yeah, my question regarding the U.S. is, of course, we know, the MAGA policy and isolationism and all that, and all the way up to the war, there's even been things that, in retrospect, may be seen as perhaps, a complex effort at misleading the Iranians into thinking nothing will happen. But then over the past few days, I've been reading Trump's comments, and especially also, maybe even it sounds insignificant, but he had this swipe at a very specific comment from Tucker Carlson. And I'm wondering whether you can detect something like a shift in this, like a sort of rift inside MAGA between this sort of America first inside, or yes, we do need to act in foreign matters. And just as an addendum to that, I would like to ask, I see two scenarios of America joining the war. One, to save Israel in a really bad way, or to take credit for what may be, the finishing act later on. So your speculation on that as well.
Well, First, to your first question, clearly there are differences in the American spectrum and political spectrum. Uh, from the outside, sometimes we're not aware of the nuances, and as Israelis, sometimes we tend to think that Washington is a monolith and that each of the two parties are monoliths. I feel that after living here for 2 years, the ability to understand the nuances are better, but there are things that are now exposed to everyone. When President Trump calls Tucker Carlson cuckoo, everyone sees this because it's on tweets with capital letters. Clearly, there is a strong faction, possibly larger than everyone would want to believe within the Republican Party, that are indeed isolationists, and very strongly so. And this doesn't affect only Israel, it affects the entire region, it affects what's happening in Europe and their position vis-a-vis Ukraine, and I'm sure it will also affect, or potentially affect, their position vis-a-vis Taiwan if China decides to embark on it, and in general, international institutions and unions and partnerships and alliances and so forth. And there is, I don't want to get too much into it, but President Trump just tweeted a few days ago that if he's the one that coined the term "Make America Great Again," it means that he gets to say what MAGA means, and no one can hijack that and say on behalf of MAGA that President Trump is not a MAGAist and so forth. That's the internal debate within the US, and the American journalists in the audience know this way better than me. Maybe all the journalists know this way better than me. What is certain is that President Trump is holding the line. President Trump, months ago, when he declared that he wants a negotiated agreement with the Iranians, there were, we'll say, questions or speculations on whether or not, what does he mean? Would he suffice with an agreement that would look like JCPOA? And there was a time that his rhetoric might have indicated this would be the case. But this has changed, I think, after activity of mainly in the US of people that are serious about this issue, including the organization I work in, Foundation for Defense of Democracies, were very active in this sphere. And unsurprisingly, President Trump used the rhetoric that I think he originally intended to use, and that is that if the US goes for a new deal with Iran, it must be a stronger deal, way stronger than JCPOA, in demanding full dismantlement of the Iranian enrichment program and so forth. And his message was, this is the outcome I'm willing to negotiate. And if this doesn't happen with negotiation, maybe it will happen with other means. And he always returned and said that his willingness is to go negotiation. And I give an elaborated answer on this because, first, I don't think that President Trump has much changed his position as it comes to Iran. I think he's been holding this line quite significantly. I think he has been pushing away the more isolationist flank in it, and the engagement or the exchange with Tucker Carlson over the last few days is just another round of exchanges that we had a few weeks ago, before basically saying to the isolationist factions in his party, this is important to me, this is important for the United States, and we need to prevent Iran from gaining a nuclear weapon. And I think he's holding a line on this. What we also need to say about this is that, and this goes back to the dynamic on the days before June 12th, if President Trump didn't want Israel to attack on June 12th, Israel wouldn't have attacked on June 12th. I wasn't on the line in the conversation between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, so I don't know if Prime Minister Netanyahu specifically asked for permission and if Trump agreed or not. What I know, and I've been in engagement with and on the call with American presidents, I know how this dynamic works. If President Trump wouldn't want Netanyahu to attack Iran on June 12th, then we wouldn't have. Exactly as we didn't in end of April, and Prime Minister Netanyahu alluded to that in one of his press conference or messages that he gave before. And I think that means that President Trump reached a conclusion that at this point, it wasn't against American interests, to say the least, and maybe also favorable that there will be a military action done by Israel. I'll be very surprised if the Americans join the war themselves. Jonathan, you've put up two scenarios where they might. I think that Israel is proving that it's pretty much capable of handling the situation so far. Of course, again, there could be surprises or turn of events. Whether or not they will join I think depends on a third parameter that you didn't mention, and that is if Iran will go after American forces, American facilities, American personnel, American interests. Iran is threatened to do this if Israel attacked the nuclear program. They haven't done so. Iran also threatened to attack the oil infrastructure in the Gulf, in Saudi Arabia, and the Emirates. They haven't done so so far. And I think that if they will do any of that, that will change the American calculus. President Trump was very, I will say, aggressive in his rhetoric last night, calling for people to evacuate Tehran. That did not translate to engagement militarily as of now, but we could be surprised tonight. We could be surprised tomorrow, and we'll need to wait and see. From Israeli perspective, and I think this is important. And I think by this I'm saying something that is general and definitely should be I think the message from Israel. Israel is not dragging the United States into this war. Israel decided to go to this campaign on its own. Israel must have concluded, and we can talk about this, the level of damage, unless all the journalists have already heard about this enough. What we've done to the weaponization group specifically is dramatic, and it will definitely prolong substantially the ability of Iran to dash and break out to a bomb. If they don't have the people and the facility to do that, this is significant. The level of damage in the enrichment program, so it seems, the damage in Natanz is significant. Of course, everybody is asking, what about Fordow? What about Fordow? And that's a good question. And Israel has said all along that that facility, short of American deep bunker busters, heavy bunker busters, those MOPs, it will be difficult for Israeli capabilities to take care of Fordow in the way that we took care of Natanz. And this could be done with American involvement in the conflict. But I think that even if this does not happen, the level of damage to the Iranian nuclear program is significant as it is. It just means that we will need to pay way more attention about what happens in the day after, what kind of arrangements we're looking for, the importance of continuous inspection by the IAEA on the remaining facilities in Iran, and so forth.
Okay, thank you for this. So I would like to continue about Fordow, just to raise a theory. First of all, whether Israel is going to use, Israeli pilots flying the B-2 bomber, which is something I personally don't think is likely, or America will do it. What about an option of Israel having now secured, according again to the IDF, such complete air control, air freedom over Tehran, over Iran, Western Iran to Tehran, that it may actually do the science fiction act of sending ground forces with the cover of drones and the Air Force to basically take Fordow, by hand, and I think, yeah, maybe perhaps prevent the latent possibility of something like a Chernobyl scenario, which a bombing from a B-2 would entail. That's one question.
There's no Chernobyl scenario. This is not a reactor. This is an enrichment facility. There is no
There's no risk of
high
any radiation
energetic.
coming out.
There are no high energetic radiation elements in an enrichment facility, and there is no chance of having anything remotely close to Chernobyl. This is not a nuclear reactor like Iran has in Bushehr, which is not a target. Israel has not even come close to targeting it. And as for your first part of the question, I don't want to be speculative about this. I think it will be irresponsible for me to address whether or not this is even possible. Everyone has seen what Israel was able to do with its commando forces over the last 2 years, and I would leave it at that.
Okay, thank you for this. Now, to ask a kind of a more generalized question with a wider perspective. Israel is obviously redesigning, let's say, the power structure of the Middle East now. And how it is going to come out the other end, you know what, we can estimate, but I'll leave it for the end of the war. I would like to ask whether you have any insights on, for example, first of all, the fact that Israel is striking UAV factories, which at least from reports I've read are being sold to Russia. Also, Israel is destroying Chinese air defense systems, which I don't see Beijing rushing to replenish in a way that reflects, let's say, what America did after October 7, or even now with reports of rushing to the tankers or whatever or in the sea. So how does this would you say radiate over the like wider power struggle? Because
Yeah.
I think at the end of Trump's thinking, there's also China Taiwan somewhere,
So first, let's talk about the Middle East context, and then maybe on the more global issues. And what you're describing is important. I said this in the beginning. Iran is in solitude. Iran is not getting the material support I think he might have expected to get, neither from Russia nor from China. Russia didn't replenish the air defense systems that were hit back in April and October in a significant way either. And when Israel is operating, we're focused on two targets: on the nuclear program component, as I said and talked about before, and on the missile component, and this industry that is arming the proxies, this ring of fire that was built around us. It's not just the Quds Force operations, but also the industry of missiles, of drones, of shorter range missiles, and a host of capabilities that we as Israel are facing, unfortunately, from various fronts, but also other countries in the region are facing from various fronts. You mentioned that some of those factors also supply Russia. They also supply Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq, and they supply the Houthis, and they supply a host of other organizations that Iran has been funding and training and arming for the purpose of causing chaos, not just with Israel, but generally in the region. And on this, I think that there is a transformative a potential in the future. We will find ourselves, when the wars are over, where the two major destabilizing factors in the region, the Islamic Brotherhood and radical political Sunni Islam embodied by Hamas on the one side, and the revolutionary radical Shiite axis led by Iran itself, and their countries and non-state organizations that abide to them. Syria has fallen. Hezbollah is weakened, and Lebanon potentially has a chance to look differently. We'll have to see what happens in Iraq. There are elections coming in soon. Maybe there will be change there as well. And if those two forces are degraded substantially, this is important not just for the national security of Israel. This is important for the national security of all of the pragmatic countries around us. These are the forces that are endangering and threatening Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Bahrain, all of the Abraham alliance, and also Jordan and Egypt, the more the older, more closer peace countries that Israel has. This might have a transformative effect on this. I use the term might because this calls for policy. This calls for political engagement with those countries, looking at the map of joint interests. This will have to go hand in hand with what do we do with Gaza? What do we do with the West Bank, Judea and Samaria? What's the future of the PA? What's the future of the normalization with Saudi Arabia? What's the future of collaboration in the region? This is a wider question. To talk about this now during a war seems a bit bizarre, but I think that this will be what will shape, I hope this will shape the agenda in the Middle East once both those wars are over, maybe still in 25, definitely next year in 26. Maybe we need a new political environment in Israel for that. We will see. I know what the government that I advise as national security advisor would view these issues, and what we would do from the Negev forum that was convened to working on regional projects like prosperity and a host of things. This is the mindset I think Israel should follow to make the best out of this situation. It's too early to talk about this now, but the potential will come definitely when both Islamic Brotherhood and Iran are weaker. The opportunities rise.
Okay, thank you for this. I would just like, as an addendum, to ask, is Russia not replenishing Iranian systems because they can't, because of the war with Ukraine, or they won't? And same thing, I mean, for China. China is not
Yeah.
in a current war, but
And maybe all of the above. I don't know, right? I mean, I don't have the deep knowledge into the calculations of Putin. It could be any of the three, and maybe all of them all together. They don't have equipment to spare. But I think on top of all, I don't think they view their relationship with Iran as strategic and core to their national security interest. Russia has never viewed Iran this way. I think Iran knows this. They backed them in the vote in the Board of Governors in Vienna on June 12th in the morning. Both Russia and China voted against the resolution declaring that Iran is in non-compliance with the Non-Proliferation Treaty. So they would, I would, maybe it's more than lip service, but they will definitely back them in their international engagements. But other than that, you don't see them even calling upon Israel or threatening that they will intervene if this doesn't stop. We don't see any of that dynamics. Iran is pretty much in solitude.
okay. I would like to mention something, from the FDD, not you, but maybe your colleagues, I don't know, maybe you in some of your papers, used to use the term for the October 7 war, Iran's war of mass distraction from its nuclear project. I think it's
Yep.
a word coined by the head of the FDD.
By
So
Mark
can you
Dubovitz,
say,
yes.
so what, I mean, clearly Israel has not been distracted, has kept its eye on the ball. And may I say also, unlike October 7 came equipped with tons of intelligence.
Yeah.
So can you say if that phrase has any meaning today from their perspective?
So, we have to look at this in a broader perspective. And many have said in Israel, outside of Israel, that we need to keep the eye on the ball. And in the context of this government, important to remind myself of this as well. Back in February of 23, when the government was just put together and the judicial overhaul just started, there was a letter signed by almost all of the national security advisors calling Prime Minister Netanyahu to remember that we need to keep an eye on the ball, and that everyone was watching and looking and watching, and that we need to make sure that Iran does not arise into a threat. I was very worried before October 7, after October 7, that Israel focus on these issues would allow Iran under this distraction to move ahead. And I think it's very important that the Israeli establishment regrouped on this and kept the eye on the ball. And the intelligence was sufficient to understand what was going on. The intelligence that was sufficient to understand what Iran was doing, and the steps, the initial step that they were making in the weaponization group, and the intel that was needed to allow for the operation to take them all out simultaneously, very surgically that night, and the intelligence that is needed to allow for the Air Force to do all of this work. This is very impressive. I've said on various occasions, the people of Israel has lost trust in their security establishment on October 7 because the security establishment, we have all failed our people. I think from top to bottom, all of us, we failed to protect the civilians of Israel on October 7. But this is the same security establishment. When we're focused, when we've prepared for many years, and I'll talk about this in a second, for these issues. We've seen this play out in Lebanon in September and October of 24, and we definitely see this in Iran. This is Israel at its best. This is the security establishment at its best. Its intelligence, its air force, its military. And I'm very proud to have first contributed to this, but also to see how this really marvelous capabilities all put together work in sync towards that end. And to add to that, this effort is not new. This hasn't started now. Israel has been preparing for a military raid from back of 2012. Maybe some of the journalists, I don't know if you've been in Israel that time, or definitely know of this before the engagement or the initiation of the negotiations that led up to the JCPOA. this is not something that is new in this regard. And definitely in recent years, the government I served for have done a lot to make sure that there will be the capabilities that are needed now. Always difficult to answer what would have happened, but I'm quite certain. I mean, I know what were the capabilities when we came in, and when Naftali Bennett became a prime minister. There was this phrase that he picked up the hood and saw that it was empty. Millions of shekels were invested to create the capabilities that I think we've seen play out in April and October, and definitely now. So this is a long lasting effort. Without all of these coins, without Mossad work for years, without Air Force work for years, we wouldn't have reached this point. And this is important because Iran has been and should have been, and I think will be until this threat is removed, on the top of the Israeli priorities of national security threats. This is the only thing that, if materialized, God forbid, would become existential for us, for the homeland of the Jewish people in the Middle East. So a lot of efforts were made over the years for this, and I'm very happy about it.
Okay, thank you for this. I would like to ask my final question about first of all, I would like to speak about China a tiny bit, and then also about Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, the talk of normalization since the war with Hamas started has been kind of on the freeze. We know Mohammed bin Salman probably wants it. There are some caveats. We know that they're being threatened by Iran, and also they signed a sort of cold agreement with Iran, I think, a year ago, a sort of diplomatic agreement which is not really palatable to either side, but they signed it, I think, out of mutual interest. Saudi Arabia was one of the first countries to condemn Israel after the attack started. Can you explain that? And secondly, I wanted to ask, Israel has been targeting so many types of targets in Iran, and there has been talk of some infrastructure or civilian targets being struck. We had the TV station. Now, you mentioned that that Iran is alone and China is not helping, etc. If Israel were to attack Iran's oil facilities, would this perhaps bring China in, considering that China is a major client of Iranian oil today? So if you could answer first about Saudi and then the other question. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think the regional dynamics in a whole, but definitely Saudi Arabia as at the pinnacle of that. We wouldn't have expected the Saudis to say anything else other than condemnation, definitely out of their basic fear and aversion of being attacked by Iran themselves. The ability of Saudi Arabia to defend itself is nowhere close to the ability of Israel to defend itself. And definitely the ability of Saudi Arabia to retaliate against Iran is limited than Israel's ability to attack Iran. And Saudi Arabia is dependent on, first and foremost, the Americans to defend them. And maybe in certain circumstances, Israel would be able to help defend against them just as much as they participated in some way in helping defending when the ballistic missiles fell in Israel. But other than that, the Gulf in general, Saudi Arabia for sure, their position over the years was to preserve de-escalation so that they are not attacked. And they say that because they were attacked in the past. We must remember the Aramco site, Abu Qaik, was attacked in 2018 or 19, and that is still a bruising memory in Saudi Arabia. Having said that, I'm sure I don't need to hear them say it. I know from various engagements of various sorts that they will be very happy to understand that Iran's nuclear ambitions are curbed and that Iran will not be able to pose such a threat on Saudi Arabia. This is a threat to the region, not just to Israel. They just would want someone else to take care of it for them, and maybe this is something that is happening in front of our eyes. I think that the choice of Iran not to attack Saudi Arabia facilities so far is very significant.
Because they have mentioned, by the way, yes?
They've threatened time and again, weeks ago and months ago, that if Israel were to attack the Iranian nuclear program, they will attack the facilities of Saudi Arabia, and they haven't done so. And I assume they haven't done so because they believe the threat that was given also by President Trump and hinted to during his visit in Riyadh, this will be a game changer for the United States. And I think Iran is doing the best it can not to drag the United States into this conflict, even though it limits their ability to retaliate, but they're not trying to expand what's already very bad for them as it is. So this is as it comes to Saudi Arabia. I'm quite certain that when all of this will end, this will create better conditions for collaboration between Israel and Saudi Arabia. The Iranian threat, by way of capacity, maybe they will want to do more, but by the way of their ability to do more, will be limited, and this will serve, I hope, for a foundation for a more collaborative and engaged, pragmatic Middle East. As for China, it's hard to answer this question. We haven't heard them saying any of that. We haven't heard them also threaten the Iranians not to attack the fields of Saudi Arabia, but maybe they did. Maybe they also contributed to the fact that Iran has not attacked Saudi Arabia oil by messaging to Iran, don't mess with the oil market. This is against our interest, and don't do that because you will lose our support. Maybe they told that to Tehran. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, if they did. But I don't know. It's not something that I know. It's just a speculation. So the Chinese can play in different roles. The Chinese have always said that what they want is de-escalation because they want the best economic conditions to happen. How will they change their position had the Iranian facilities been attacked? I don't know. Maybe there are engagements on this as well. President Trump said that he would not want that to happen and to be a part of it. But this might also change if there is clear escalation with the Iranian response. Iran just fired at our refinery facilities in Haifa. What does that mean? Does that justify Israel's attack on Iranian oil facilities and refineries in Iran? Maybe it does. Why would Iran attack our refinery facilities and Israel cannot retaliate in similar coins? This is the dynamics of military conflict. I don't want to presume either way. I'm just giving the parameters here, and I won't be surprised if we will see escalation towards the energy sector if this extends for much longer. I think it is in Iran's interest to start finishing this as well, but for that they will need to do meaningful moves, because this will entail also agreements on how to inspect, dismantle their nuclear facilities in the future.
Okay, thank you very much for this detailed response, Dr. Hulata. Final question: do you have any prediction or even guess on how long this will take? We've been in it for just about 5 days since Thursday night.
Well, it's hard to say. I think that if Israel is about to exhaust our targets as it comes to the objectives as we set them, namely the nuclear program, just waiting to see if the Americans will join and take care of Fordow, I think is not a good enough a reason to continue to extend it much longer. But maybe there is direct deliberation between Jerusalem and Washington on this. So it might take a few more days, maybe a bit longer. But I think that given the situation as a whole, Israel cannot conduct a war with Iran endlessly. This is not across the border like Gaza or Lebanon, and I'm sure that this is coming up in the inner deliberations. And my hope is that Israel will finish to achieve its goals in the near future, and we can start wrapping this up.
Okay, thank you very much for this. Dr. Eyal Hulata, former NSC director during the Bennett-Lapid government, today a member of the FDD, the Federation for Defense of Democracies, speaking to us from Washington, D.C. A regular guest of the Jerusalem Press Clubs in briefing in the past. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Hulata. And I would like to also thank you. I would like to thank Ali Naor from the Content Department who facilitated this briefing. Like the previous briefings of this week, this will be on our YouTube channel, hopefully as soon as we can. I thank all the journalists on the line for your questions. Thank you very much.